Hello, hello. Can you hear me? Good afternoon. Please welcome the fabulous Richard E. Grant.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. Congratulations on this amazing movie and this amazing performance with you and Melissa together. Remarkable work. Before I begin to ask you all about the film, I actually did want to just ask kind of a weird question. Does it smell okay in here?
So long as everybody doesn't leave, it will smell very good. No, it does. Smells good.
You're obsessed with aroma and with scent.
I am, yeah.
Your character's name is Jack, but Jack also has another meaning in your life right now.
Oh yeah, God, I never thought you'd be asking me this. Yeah, I have a scent range called Jack, and that's what it looks like. And you can buy it in New York too. And it's lime, marijuana, mandarin are the top notes. And I tried when I was 12 years old to make scent for the first American girl that I had ever met. In 1969, she came to Swaziland. Her parents were involved in overseas development organization, and she taught me to French kiss. I don't know whether it means the same thing here, but it means using your tongue. And she also chewed gum and spoke really fast, and I had such a crush on her and tried to buy perfume for her birthday but couldn't afford it with my pocket money, so I made gardenia and rose petal boiled up in sugar water, thinking this would turn into perfume, but it didn't. So 40 years later I did. I don't know what's happened to Betsy, but you know, they landed on the moon that year and I fell in love with Betsy Clapp, so here I am to tell the story.
Well, there's just so many interests in your life that I want to get into a little later, but we can start by, one of the things I've heard you say is that the important things for you when you're deciding to take a part is script, director, cast, location, and whether it's going to be fun.
Yeah.
It seems like this project went down the list in that regard.
It did. I hadn't... how many people are actors in the room? Oh, my tribe. Hello. You'll understand this perfectly. So November, this time 2 years ago, we're in November now, yeah. I got a email from my agent who said, you have 24 hours to read this script and say yes or no. And I said, well, what is it, like Mission Impossible? And she said, no, it's not going to blow up. So I said, well, who's dropped dead or dropped out? She said, don't be paranoid. Put all that aside and read it. So I read, and I saw Diary of a Teenage Girl. There was the director, Marielle Heller, so I immediately knew that this was something that was going to be smartly conceived of, or that she'd put a name to it. And then I recognized Nicole Holofcenter and Jeff Whitty from the work that they'd done, especially Avenue Q that he'd written for the Broadway musical. And then it said Melissa McCarthy, and I thought, wow, that's really difficult. So I wasn't sure whether this was going to be a vehicle for, because it was a true story, and I thought, well, maybe this is one of those corner of a New Yorker articles that has become a vehicle for a movie star to do what we're used to seeing her doing. So when I read it, I then realized that it was a completely different whole new access for her to have gone into. And so, of course, I read it and said yes immediately, and then got here in the middle of January last year, 2017. And so I'm a detail freak, so I remember all this rubbish. And we got here on a Wednesday, and Marielle said, okay, there's a costume fitting, and what we're going to do with your hair and your makeup and stuff, and then you will start shooting with Melissa for the first time on Monday. And I said, so when do we rehearse? And she said, no, there won't be, because she's only coming in from LA on Friday. And I said, no, you don't understand the level of my paranoia. If I have to meet Melissa for the first time on Monday morning, I won't sleep for 72 hours, so I won't remember my lines, so it'll keep your schedule go out of whack. So it then turned out that Melissa, of course, being Melissa, the person that she is, was so generous and had the exact same impulse. And so we met, they carved out some time on the Friday morning. We met for a couple of hours, got on instantaneously, and it was very, very clear that she was going to lower her voice, and her whole center of gravity as a character seemed to be shifted from her buoyant, glass 3/4 full persona and personality. So that gave me the steer of how I should go into this part on Monday. And that's how it started. And 26 days later, the movie was finished, the shooting part of it. So it was an absolute joy to do, I cannot tell you.
You're a fan of Malcolm Gladwell and his wonderful book Blink, where
Yes.
he talks about, I think in about 9 seconds, you can tell from meeting someone whether you guys are going to get along.
Yeah, well, I envied your cheekbones within about 2 seconds.
Oh.
But Malcolm Gladwell is a great, philosopher journalist that I think lives in your city here. I'd read all of his books, and in Blink it said that you make a decision about another human being, even if you change your mind, within the first, 9 to 15 seconds, even if you change your mind later. And that was absolutely true with Melissa. I mean, I'd like to tell you that she was difficult, uncollaborative, had bad breath, was grouchy, didn't know her lines, but she defied all of those expectations and was as generous. And the thing that you will appreciate more than anybody is that she had absolutely not one vestige of vanity in how she approached playing Lee Israel, who is, I always think of characters in terms of animals that, possibly because of where I grew up in Africa, but I always thought that Jack Hawk is a kind of Labrador in that he will go up and lick anybody into submission, either for a bed, a shag, free food, whatever he can get. Thank you. Shag does translate here. I mean, it's a dance as well. But so that, and I thought, well, she is essentially a very prickly porcupine of a character that even when you feel that you're getting close, you're still going to get damaged. And she doesn't want to let anybody in. So she's kind of her own worst enemy. So Melissa was unequivocal in the way that she played that, and I thought wholly unsentimental. And I think that scene that she does in the courtroom at the end, where she is expected, and I think we as an audience expect her to show remorse. She begins to show the vestiges of it, and then just there's a kind of fuck you element where she goes, this is my proudest moment, and it's the best time that I had in my life. And I loved that about her. She was just so uncompromising. And I think in terms of the cinema that we see now, especially in relation to the indie movies that I grew up on in the early 70s, when it was still Coppola, Altman, and Scorsese were the 3 triptych gods of my cinema going.
Worked with all 3 of them.
Yeah, thank you. So to see a movie that embraces characters that are dealing with loneliness, their sexuality, all of these things, without making it a sort of banner issue headline movie, I thought was such a smart choice of the screenwriters, and in the compassionate way that Marielle Heller dealt with the story as well. So, all praise to them.
Well, and also it's such a beautiful nostalgia piece for early 90s New York City. It's pre-internet, it's pre-cell phones, there's fax machines, there's
and pre-Times Square being lit like Disneyland.
Right. And there are bookstores.
Yes.
That are so lovingly portrayed. You
Yes.
can't really find those anymore.
They are disappearing as fast as we're sitting here. Yeah, no, it's true. So I think that, and I know that Marielle talked about this with the production designer, that there's a sofa put up against something to hide 21st century gubbins. And being New York, somebody thought that had just been left out rather than being a disguise, and it was removed. So
it's impossible to see you in this film and not think of Whitnell and I.
A fellow drunkard.
Your first movie role
32 years ago.
32 years ago. Please,
thank
please
you.
everybody. It deals with some of the same, it's also comic, bittersweet, but
Yeah.
deals with loneliness and friendship.
Mhm.
Did you attach the two films in a way, or was it just another role for you? It's a different character, of course, but
I never saw any obvious similarities, but obviously I'm the same person. So critics have pointed it out, and you've just pointed it out. So I know that they're both drunks, but whereas the one was an entitled upper class, fucker who didn't care about anybody else, it seems that this guy is much more determined to be engaged with the world to his last breath. And I think that's the one was so self-destructive, whereas this guy is trying everything to do, even though he has shagged his way through Manhattan, is trying to hold on to life as much as possible. But yes, they are fellow alcoholics, and they're played by the same actor.
well,
I obviously don't have enough range to convince you otherwise, but thank you for that.
I rewatched with Nell this week and or last week, and I was
So they're the same, are they?
no.
Okay.
No.
I don't know because I haven't watched it.
One yeah. So you don't watch your own work?
Oh, no. I don't know whether you find this, but actors, I think, understand this more than anything, but people who don't, it's like listening to yourself for the first time on a tape recorder. And I always think that it's like if you said to somebody on the street, do you like having sex? And if they didn't hit you first, they said yes. Do you like watching yourself having sex? And they go, oh, God, no. That's exactly what it feels like to me watching yourself, because you can't fix it and you see the bits and you go, oh, no. The disconnect between what you hope the character's going to be and what it actually is, I think, is too brutal. So I haven't got used to that yet.
When on the rare occasions where you have watched yourself, do you see mistakes, things you wished you had done differently?
Yeah. And it's brutal. And I've got used to it. I mean, I'll tell you, and I don't mean this disingenuously, but when I saw the first showing of Withnail, before I think all the final music had been done, I gouged blood out of my wife's hand, out of her wrist, while watching it. She didn't realize it either, because I was so distraught at what I saw. And I said to Bruce Robinson, the writer-director, I said, I know that I fucked up your film. Please take my money back, because I know I'll never work again. So I was wholly convinced that that would be the truth. So I'm very grateful that other people didn't feel the same way.
In rewatching it though, it's similar to this film in which there are no real punchlines in the comedy. It's played rather straight. There's a scene in Withnail when you need to go catch a fish. And so you go out in a jacket and a tie with a rifle and into a stream and just start shooting at whatever fish you could possibly see. But you're playing it completely poker-faced. We're laughing, but it's not from your, you're not seeing it as a joke.
Okay.
And I feel like Jack is, the comedy comes from the relationship between Lee Israel and himself, and also from the situations. Do you, as a comedic actor, do you sort of approach things more deadpan?
The best way I can answer that is Bruce Robinson, who wrote and directed the Withnail film, said on the first day of rehearsals, he said, you have to play these characters absolutely for real and in the situation of desperation that they're in, because if there is any knowingness or wink at the audience, you get what he called the Peter Sellers syndrome, where people are almost corpsing while they're doing it. And he had a rule that if anybody laughed at all during the shooting of it from the crew members, even there was a titter, he'd say, cut, and we'd go again, because he wanted it to be as you to feel the misery of what these unemployed actors were going through, which I had certainly experienced for 9 months, unemployment in 1985, which I will never forget. So, that really that was such a great guidance of how to play comedy. And Melissa operated from the exact same position on this film, that I never felt there was any kind of, I know this is a funny bit coming up. The comedy came out of the desperation of these people's situations, and I think that's the best kind of comedy, because that in a way resonates with human experience, as opposed to, this is a clever, funny line that's coming up that you can then repeat, which out of context you go, what the fuck, that's not funny. Whereas in the context of the film, it is. Does that answer your question?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, you could hear from the audience's response that they enjoy these little tidbits.
Okay.
Was there any discussion about speaking in an American accent? Because Dolly Wells, who plays the bookshop owner, is so lovely.
Yeah.
Is English, and she speaks in an American accent. For you, I mean, I love it that we get to hear you speak in your own voice. But was there a discussion with Marielle about that aspect?
Yeah, it was my first question, because I thought, finally I get to play an American. Because I knew that Jack Hock came from Portland in Oregon. Obviously, you know that, but if I say Portland in England, nobody knows where the fuck that is, whereas you all do. So I asked Marielle, and she said, no, I want you to. I said, is it because you don't think that I can do one? She said, no, I think that you should do it in your own accent. So there was never there was a kind of no discussion about it because I thought, well, she's the boss. So, and I'm very obedient.
You've spoken before about the fact that you don't drink, actually.
Yeah, allergic to alcohol.
Allergic to alcohol,
Yeah.
yeah. But is there something? So you're forced oftentimes to observe people drinking and getting drunk and telling the same stories.
Thanks for coming.
With just over the course of your career, in cases like with Nell and here, when you've had to play someone who's sloshed,
Yeah.
do you think in a way that you are able to gain more insight as an observer of other people who are?
I don't really know how to answer that question. I found out when I was 17 that I had blood tests because I couldn't understand why I couldn't hold alcohol down for more than 9 minutes. And this guy said to me, "Do you have Oriental blood?" Which, PC incorrect, last century. And I said, "I don't understand what you mean." He said, "Well, do you have Chinese or Japanese blood?" And I said, "Not that I know of." And he said, "Well, you have no enzyme that processes alcohol, so you're completely allergic and it's toxic to your system. You can never, ever drink." So I believed him because I know what the experience was. But my understanding of drunkenness is that there's an enormous concentration that happens of trying not to be drunk and just trying to get through that door without falling over. And that seems to me the way of doing it. And how I've escaped the penalty of being around people who are very, very drunk is when the story starts coming around for the third time. That's when I know when people say, "You don't drink," then just leave because that's coming next. So that's what I've done.
So I want to ask you about some other your passions outside of acting, and see if we can link them back to your career as an actor.
Why? I only live for one thing.
We'll see.
Okay.
One of the
You're
ones
very smart.
that we share is scuba diving.
Yes.
Now, so much of scuba diving is preparation.
Yes.
There's so many safety checks, and also regulating your breathing.
Yeah.
Both things that I would assume play into a career as an actor as well, or any career really.
Okay. I'll try and be very serious about your serious question. I love it that you've asked me this. I've never been asked that in all the years I've been doing it. Scuba diving and acting. Discuss. No, but seriously. The word that you've said, there's a magic word for everything, is preparation. Because if you are... I remember that Noel Coward, when I read his autobiography, he said, "I like the actors to know all the script before they come in on the first day of rehearsals." And from that, I got that you have to be as prepared as you possibly can be, so that when you're in the Robert Altman free zone of improvising, you've got a real bedrock from which to then do your work, if you can call it that, or having a good time. So if you're not prepared, then you get undone. And I've worked with actors who haven't been prepared, and it's a fucking nightmare for them and for you, because you've got to kind of accommodate them. The breathing bit, I know that that you talk about that technique, and my wife is an accent coach and voice coach, so she talks about breathing quite a lot. But I think when you're acting, if you've done the preparation for your character, how you breathe. Have you thought about breathing while you've been sitting here, Mr. Scuba Man? Because I haven't. You don't think about it. I know that in Shakespeare, you take one big breath at the beginning and you make it go all the way through to get to the end of the thought in the sentence. But otherwise, when you're talking, I think it's like fucking. You just do it because you love it. Sorry, I've been very indiscreet here talking about my sex life and scuba diving.
Where's your favorite place in the world to dive?
Where's the best place in the world to dive? The Red Sea. Yeah, that's been the Red Sea and the Maldives and the yes, around there.
Another one of the ones I want to ask you about is your love of hotels.
Yes.
You did two seasons of a TV series that just sort of chronicled you going around the world and visiting these wonderful palace hotels. What drew you into doing that? To take time away from your acting career.
Okay, well, I'm sure you're the only person in this country that's even seen or heard of this series. But essentially, I was asked to go round. Somebody at this documentary company had seen documentary that I'd done for the BBC about the history of safari, and one about the history of diarists, because I've been a lifelong diarist since I was 11 years old, seeing my mother's father's best friend fucking her on the front seat of a car. And I made it into a movie. Because they saw that I was a nosy Parker and asked lots of questions, they thought this might be a good fit to be somebody going around to mine the background of luxury hotels and their stories. So I got to interview, because it was completely unscripted, everybody from your president, before he was president 5 years ago, to Heidi Fleisch. And that's quite a contrast, isn't it? From president... Discuss. So it was an amazing job, and because I love licking plates and smelling everything in sight, I licked the plates, I smelt everything, I jumped on the beds, and they kept all this stuff in. It became the signature of this series. So it was a dream job for an actor to have, because I got to meet the most extraordinary cross-section of people that I would never normally have got to meet, which has really been one of the signatures of what I think an actor's life can be if you're lucky enough to work as much as I have.
And another one of your passions, which I was very surprised but very charmed to hear, when you were 14 living in Swaziland, you wrote a fan letter to Barbra Streisand.
Yes, I did. Are there any Babs fans in the room tonight? Good, I'm with my people. No, it was an amazing thing, because I had seen her in Funny Girl when I was 12 years old, and then I saw her in What's Up Doc when all my hormones were going, completely berserk. And I used to subscribe to 2 movie magazines, and I saw that she was having trouble with, according to the magazine, with Ryan O'Neill. So I said, "Dear Barbra Streisand, we have a lovely house in Swaziland. In Southeast Africa, it's the smallest country in the southern hemisphere. We have a pool. Nobody will know who you are here. Please come and stay." So I finally met her when I was doing the Altman film, The Player, in LA in 1990. I met her at a party, and I'd had this odd situation where, and I realized that any kind of fan discussion is really a cul-de-sac, because you have no involvement or knowledge of the person's life in particular, but they seem to have great detail about yours. So I had a situation where I had 19-year-old Winona Ryder, who was quoting, because she was with Johnny Depp at that time, quoting every line of Withnail's screenplay at me. And while she was fan worshipping this way, I saw Barbra Streisand over the room like that. And I was like, yeah, Winona, lovely to meet you. Yeah. And she would say, "No, you have to be in Francis Ford Coppola's going to get you in Dracula, because that's my next project." I said, "Yes, great, lovely Winona, yada, yada, but that's Barbra Streisand over there." So I spoke to the hostess of the party, and I said, "Is there any possibility that I could please meet the great Babs?" So I did, and I had a 22-minute conversation with her that I will never forget. And the first thing she said to me, she said, "Are you stoned?" And I said, really cheesy, I said, "No, I'm just absolutely on a high meeting you." So I then met her subsequently, and it has been, my poor wife has had to tolerate this for 35 years of marriage, an absolute obsession with Babs. And I tell you, the day that James Brolin married her, I felt like I'd been stabbed in the back, because my chance was gone. And I know you're supposed to get over this stuff when you're, past adolescence, but as you can see, I'm a 62-year-old man going on 17, so. But thank you for bringing that up.
No. Someone I wanted to mention...
Scuba diving to Streisand.com.
I wanted to mention Arjun Basan.
Yes, the costume designer.
The costume designer for this film, who did... not enough costume designers get credit for more contemporary work.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this isn't set in contemporary times, but, the recent past. What was it like? I mean, the clothes make up the man in a lot of ways here.
Yeah, it's 90% of what you see.
How much is that in terms of developing character and being him?
Oh,
does that matter?
I owe, and anybody in this room will know that, you owe so much to a costume designer who intuits and is on the exact same page as you are about how a character should be. I didn't realize that he would go for, really sort of neo-romantic, early 1980s Spandau ballet costumes for me, which Melissa was absolutely crazed for. She wanted my wardrobe, everything I came out. She, "Oh God, I gotta have that." I think she tried to buy all of them, and she can afford it too. So when I saw the clothes that he'd given, that this was a man, in the last gasp at the Singles Bar in the early 90s, in advanced middle age, still wearing those same clothes, it was a real gift to go. It also, that in conjunction with the little cigarette holder that I asked for, that was the one thing that Lee Israel mentioned in the memoir that Jack had. I thought those two things, Arjun's clothes and this cigarette holder, suggested a kind of, I don't know, Peter O'Toole-ish flamboyance or self-image that he had, that I thought, well, you've got to step up to the plate for that, because he obviously felt confident enough to sashay around Greenwich Village in the early 90s trying to pull that look off. So I took, that really helped me enormously.
And also I wanted to mention, you kind of just referred to it a little bit earlier, you're a diarist, and the remarkable memoir, I guess you could say, With Nails, in the mid-90s, where you kind of recounted a lot of your career from With Nail and I up until about, I guess, through Dracula and The Age of Innocence.
Spice World the movie.
Spice World the movie.
Yeah.
Spice World the movie, but which got you a really great role about 10 or so years later, didn't it?
Yeah, because some grandees in my profession in England were very snooty about the fact that I was in Spice World the movie. But when I explained that my 8-year-old daughter was an absolute obsessive fan of the Spice Girls and wanted to meet them desperately and said, "You have to be in this movie. Thanks so much for coming." And she said, "You have to be in this movie," so I did. And then, as happens, 20 years later, Adele, with whom I share a birthday, sent me tickets to go and see her sing live when you couldn't get these tickets with Love Nor Money, because she was a Spice World fan. And Lena Dunham, who's a New Yorker, wrote 4 episodes for me to be in Girls because she knew me from Spice World the movie. So, fuck 'em. You never know.
And lastly, I just also wanted to mention you've been a director of Wawa, which is about your childhood, and you've had a few abortive attempts to direct more, but of course with indie film production, it's so hard to raise money. This film was 10 years in the making.
Yeah.
So,
26 days in the shooting.
Yeah. How special is it, though, to be part of something, to be part of film like this that is shot like on the street in 26 days, took so long to make it, but finally, paid off? Is it almost more rewarding because you know what that world is like?
Yeah. The fact that the movie got made at all, and with somebody of the star wattage of Melissa McCarthy, is remarkable. And obviously because of her, it got made. But even so, for her to take a career choice from going from the big studio movies comedies that she has been making, to then do this, that in itself might not seem a risk to take, but I think it is a risk to take, which has paid off handsomely for her, and luckily for me, because the other thing is that nobody goes into a movie, as you will know in this room, with the idea that it's going to turn into Hudson Hawk. You go in with the best intentions of thinking, it's like going to, thank you, it's like going to a romance. You think, well, on paper, internet dating, whatever it is that you're doing, this person looks like a good match, you're going to have a good time, and you hope that the chemistry is going to happen. But, 9 out of 10 times, that it doesn't work out like that. So the fact that this has, and I'm even sitting here, that, I've never been on this kind of awards run that I'm now involved in my entire career, and I know it'll never happen again. So I'm so grateful for it, because that it's a kind of, it's a lightning in a bottle moment until next week when it's somebody else. So while it lasts, my God, I'm savoring all of it. So thank you.
Should mention that you're going to leave here and go off to the Gotham Awards, which is the first big sort of New York City kickoff to the award season, where you're nominated. Independent Spirit Award nomination, and as
you said that so fast. I've never been nominated for something, so it's like I say it really slowly. It's unbelievable to me.
And then let's end by making some news.
Okay.
Who are you playing in Star Wars Episode 9?
I am playing.
The mic's just cut out.
And the plot of the movie is this. And it comes out on the 19th of December, 2019. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Congratulations again on this fabulous performance and film.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.